Hello brain shakers, welcome to today's session where we're going to be looking at the positive feedback mechanism. We have looked at the negative feedback mechanism, and the opposite of the negative feedback mechanism is a positive feedback mechanism. Not so many systems use this particular system in controlling body activities, but then let's dive into today's session and understand what the positive feedback mechanism is all about. And from our understanding already is that we understand what a stimulus is, what a sensor is, the control center, the effector, the input, as well as the output, which are just some of those terminologies that we will be using as we look at the positive feedback mechanism. Now, for the positive feedback mechanism, you would find this mostly when it comes to the hormone oxytocin, because oxytocin plays a key role in childbirth and also plays a key role when it comes to breastfeeding. Now, let us look at how oxytocin utilizes the positive feedback mechanism when it comes to the process of childbirth. So you will understand also that around the third trimester of pregnancy, the fetus engages further into the lower portion of the uterus and then applies pressure on the cervix. So that pressure that is exerted on the cervix is what is going to be the stimulus in here. So we are going to say that there is pressure on the cervix. So that is the fetal head that has applied pressure on the cervix, and this pressure that has been exerted on the cervix is the stimulus, because this is what is going to then cause the change. So what the pressure is doing on the cervix is that it is forcing the cervix to then dilate, and as it is forcing or stretching the cervix to start opening up, that is then detected by the sensors. So before we get to the stretch receptors, we can actually put cervical dilatation here. Okay, cervical dilatation. From cervical dilatation, this then is detected by the stretch receptors. Okay, so once the stretch receptors detect this stretch or the pressure that is exerted on the cervix, then they are going to use their afferent pathways and send a message to the control center. So you will have the control center here, which is in this case is going to be the brain. So it sends a message to the control center here, which is going to be an input in this case. So it sends a message to the control center to say the cervix here is being stretched, and because of this stretch, the control center here, which has the capacity of analyzing the information that it is receiving and the stimulus that is actually causing that distension there, it is going to interpret the message that has been sent by the stretch receptors. So in this case, it interprets that there is dilatation of the cervix, and it is also using other information. It knows that now it is time for delivery, it is time for the end of this pregnancy. So it is going to then stimulate the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei in the hypothalamus to have produced already the oxytocin. Then the oxytocin now travels to the posterior aspect of the pituitary gland, and there from the pituitary gland it is then released in the circulatory system, and then will go to the effector, which is going to be the muscle. So the control center now is going to send a message, and this control center is sending a message. You had the input, and the one that comes out of the control center is what we are going to call the output. So there will be an output which will be going to the effector. Now, which one is the effector in this case? So the effector here are basically going to be the muscles that are going to be within the uterine walls. So the muscles within the uterine walls here will then receive the oxytocin. So once the oxytocin has come into these muscles, it means that these muscles will then be forced to contract forcibly. And as they are contracting forcibly, it means that they are pushing that fetal head even further. So if you have a cervix here and you had the fetal head here, with more contractions that are being exerted there, they are pushing this fetal head even further. So you have the head coming down and the cervix is being stretched even further. So that further stretching of the cervix because of the oxytocin that has then been released and acting on these uterine wall muscles is then going to further cause more pressure on the cervix and further stretching. So the further stretching now will then further cause the dilatation of the cervix. And because there is a continuity in the pressure that is exerted on the cervix, these stretch receptors are not going to relax. They will continue detecting that pressure and then still sending that input to the control center to produce more oxytocin. So more oxytocin now is going to be produced and it is going to be released from the posterior pituitary gland, coming to act on the effector organs, which are the muscles in the uterine walls again. And then there will be more forceful contractions. It means that the intensity and the regularity also of contractions is going to increase. And that is going to further continue the pressure being exerted on the cervix. So the cycle is then going to continue like that. So this positive feedback mechanism is only going to be interrupted once there is a delivery. So once the baby now has been delivered, it means that there is no more pressure that is being exerted on the cervix. So no more pressure is being exerted on the cervix, and then the stretch receptors now are no longer detecting any pressure there, so they will stop now sending a message to the control center, meaning that the control center also, which is the brain in this instance, will now no longer allow for the release of that oxytocin to come to the uterine muscles. So that is how the positive feedback mechanism is going to work. But in the case of breastfeeding, you will notice that as the baby is then going to continue sucking from the nipple, that will stimulate the body, also sends a nerve impulse again to the control center, which is the brain, that then can you produce more of that oxytocin, and the oxytocin is then going to come and target the myoepithelial cells, which are basically the cells that you will find just around the acini cells, the ones that are producing the milk. So these ones will be then the target organs, and they will be forced to contract, and as they contract, then they will produce and release that milk, and the baby continues feeding. As the baby continues feeding onto the nipples there, the stimulation also continues. It means that the cycle of this positive feedback mechanism will continue because there is a reinforcement from the sucking that is coming as a result of the baby being fed. So that will continue the entire process. And this feedback mechanism also is also going to only be halted when the baby has been weaned and the baby has stopped breastfeeding from the mother. That means that there will now be no more pulling of the nipples, no more stretching the breast tissue, and then it cuts the sending of impulses from the stretch receptors to the control center, which is the brain. And then the brain now no longer releases that oxytocin to then go ahead and cause the myoepithelial cells to then contract and release the oxytocin. And so the oxytocin, when it is actually produced, especially in times of breastfeeding, you will notice that the mother is, especially immediate postpartum, the mother will also have contractions of the uterus because they're still in the period of involution, meaning that the oxytocin is also working to bring about the involution of the uterus. So there will be contraction of the uterine wall muscles there to bring about involution so that it can then go back to its normal size. So basically that is about the positive feedback mechanism. Its main aim is basically to reinforce the outcome of whatever it is called in whether it is breastfeeding or it is codeine for the process of intensifying the contractions. Now, if you found this particular video helpful and insightful, don't hesitate to give it a thumbs up, likes, and then comment as well. Drop me comments in the comments section, and make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. And as always, it's a pleasure to have you watching and supporting the channel. Thank you so much, and I am looking forward to also seeing you in the membership team. So please remember to join the membership, where you can have access to other videos and other sessions and tutorials that are not available to the general public and are only for members only. So thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in my next video.